Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hedin, owner of Illustrious Hardwoods in Mesa, Arizona. With me this week is Dave Larson of Shower Concepts and United Tile and Stone outside of Denver, Colorado. There is a tale that I see posted to the online flooring groups constantly, and it just depresses me. Oh, you know what? We're off to a great start this week. Let's not have the audio come back through. Okay, so now that I've fixed my technical error, all right, so there's this tale, right? You go in the online flooring groups, you see posts, and they say, I've been in the business 10, 20, 40 years. I'm getting out. It's time for me to retire. It's time for me to move on, whatever the case may be. I'm selling everything for X amount of money, depending on what trade, what they have, trailers, trucks, multiple crews, whatever it may be. But essentially, they're selling their entire business after a very long time for the value of the depreciating assets. And it upsets me that someone would invest that much time into a career, into a business, and at the end of it, all they own is a job worth the value of their assets. So we've got Dave here. He did not start out as United Tile and Stone. He actually started the company as Larson Tile and Stone, or another name, Larson something, I forget exactly, but
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
okay, we're gonna get into that. And then it became United Tile and Stone, and he's now since made a deal with his former employees who are now his business partners, and they own the company. He's consulting. He continues to draw a salary from it, but the company still exists, and they're moving on and into the future to where he's got a steady income still from something that he's built. The employees are invested. We're going to get into all of that because this is the way it should be done. When you own a business, you don't want to own a job. And that's what most contractors are doing, is they're owning a job. That gets into why Floor Academy podcast is even here. That's what we do. Every week we're having these business discussions to help you move your company forward from being a job to being an actual sustaining business, to where you can show, when I invest X amount of money into my business, I'm going to get X amount of dollars on the back end. And hopefully it's a very big multiple. And it's not going to be 1-to-1 or 1-to-2. Let's go one to 1,000. Let's hope, right? Like for every dollar that I can put into it, I can get $1,000 out. That would be an excellent return on investment. So we're gonna get into that in just a minute. We'll have Dave introduce himself. Before we get started, I want to let you know that Bihui is a leading tool manufacturer for professional tiling installers and construction professionals, focusing on large format tile cutters and installation tools for all types of ceramic and porcelain tiles. With hundreds of products, Bihui continuously focuses on innovation and product improvement based on the needs of the market. Their goal is to provide the highest quality products available and to be the tool manufacturer of choice for professional installers globally. Better Tools is proud to be the exclusive USA distributor of Bihui products. Don't miss your opportunity to win a new 40-inch Sea Lion manual tile cutter with LED light. Find the details in the Floor Academy group during the month of March. The giveaway will take place in April. If you're watching live or you are watching the YouTube video, I have this cutter is right behind me. It's super awesome. I will get it shipped out to whoever wins it. I'm very thankful to be partnered with Bihui on this and be able to give that away. I also want to let you know that starting in April, there will be a new mastermind group facilitated by myself and Floor Academy. So that will be beginning at the beginning of April as well. I am looking for 5 business owners that want to take their business to the next level. And we will be meeting every other week to assist you in doing that, having the conversation, setting the goals to be able to move your business forward. Whew. Okay. Now we've got all of that out of the way. Dave, thank you for joining me. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it?
I'm Dave Larson. I run Shower Concepts. I'm part of United Tile and Stone. I've been in the tile industry for a long time. So I'm very grateful for podcasts like this to teach us and myself and others new ways of looking at things. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was very kind of our mutual friend Bill Parker to connect us and make this happen. He had nothing but mean things to say about you, I promise.
Oh, great. Don't listen to him. No.
No, never, never. I would never trust Bill. I kid, but no, he has great things to say about you. Says that you were a formidable opponent in the market for him, right? Like you guys were both competing on the same level up there and outside of Denver, and that it was nice to have somebody, pushing the limits of what's possible in installations and staying up to date with, the standards and guidelines and just doing it right, because
Yeah.
we all know that there's a lot of bad work out there.
Yeah. I wish I would have met up with him earlier and we could have partnered up. We could have been a force to be reckoned with back
Mm.
then.
I
Um,
believe it. I believe it. So where does this journey begin, right? So let's kind of go back, and it was Larson Tile and Stone. It wasn't even United
yeah.
Tile and Stone. So how did you kind of fall into the industry, get going, decide that this is what I'm investing in myself and I'm going to move forward?
Well, I started in a small company in Minnesota, which was Clearwater Interiors. It was in a small town, small company. And the owner of the company, Mark Lemke, had this vision of doing everything right as best he could. So he was training me to be a tile installer, and put some time and effort into me. Well, long and short, I moved to Colorado, got wrapped up with another tile company, and their vision was as much as you could do. It
Hmm.
had nothing to do with quality. And so I worked with them for a few years doing commercial, and it left. I learned a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I felt like as I was doing side jobs and listening to how you are supposed to bill things and how things are supposed to pay, it kind of led me into starting my own company. It was like, well, this doesn't make any sense. What do you mean setting stone? You should get $10 a foot, but we don't deduct the materials. Or this is the going rate, is what I'd always hear. So we started operating that way, and I'm like, well, that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Hmm.
So that's what drew me into starting my own business was, well, I know I would sleep better at night if I did a good job, used the best materials, and did it as good as I could do it, versus hurry up, get it done. And it started questioning the way I was looking at our trade because you had to be a subcontractor. Well, I met this kid that was working in the same company I was, and there's no way he could be a subcontractor. He was a helper. So I took him on as an employee, and he's one of the owners of United Tile now. But I was 24, I believe, and he was 20 when
Okay.
we started Larson Tile and Stone. And maybe I was 25, and right in there anyway.
Hmm.
So we saw that and saw, we can do jobs right, do the best we can, and move forward, and we can play around with pricing. So what we started experimenting with is adding the materials and then putting a markup on the materials and then having our labor. So we had our labor as one thing and the materials as another thing. And after a
Hmm.
couple of years of picking up materials, we decided, well, we should have a markup on the materials because you might have 2 or 3 days on picking up materials.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if you've got 2 or 3 days with 2 or 3 guys and you're picking up materials, that's a huge cost. So
Oh
we
yeah.
should have a markup on that to cover that expense. And then as you start rolling into being a subcontractor, and now I have him as an employee, and then we started picking up another employee as we started training him. So we started training within, and that was kind of our motto. Even if we picked up a tile guy that had 5 years experience or whatever, we would train them to our system.
Okay.
And it was basically work neat, clean, organized, keep your mouth shut to the owner when it comes to when they want to change things, tell them to come to the office, and the office will submit a change order, and then we can talk about whether we change anything in the field. So we just started kind of looking at it more like a business rather than just a job.
Hmm. So what was
And that started early on.
were these systems documented in that, you would bring somebody in and it was, this is how we install, and you could train the person to the standards you set forth, and then the system of, hey, don't talk to the owner, don't, you can't discuss changes. They have to go to the office. Was this stuff written in like an employee handbook, or was it documented in some way so everybody knew this is what we do? I've signed the sheet of paper agreeing that this is the process. Now,
Yeah.
okay.
Initially, it wasn't, but we did
Hmm.
get to a place where we're like, we need to document this. Not only this, we need to document how we're estimating. We need to take everything out of the brain and get it into a computer so that you can pump out an estimate in 15, 20 minutes versus, handwriting in Word, everything that you're doing. And initially, that seemed overwhelming for a tile guy, right?
Hmm.
Because you're like, how am I going to do all this? But the technology's there. And the nice thing about the younger generation is they know how to use the technology. They're more, I think the next generation has got a head start on us guys that started before computers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's a real advantage there. So we started playing around in QuickBooks and creating groups and assemblies. So you would basically put down all the products into the estimate, into the system, and we'd have our whole estimating figured out. All you had to do is pump in the square footage. And you had natural stone, porcelains, square edge porcelains, architectural stone, everything, slab fabrication,
Hmm.
all that stuff into a system. So you could take anybody, set them down at the desk, and they could pump out an estimate as long as they could figure out square footage, lineal footage, and what type of assembly. If you push steam shower, you just click the button steam shower and all the materials popped up. You just had to calculate how many square feet in lineal feet.
Wow. Nice. That's huge. And that's exactly the kind of stuff that this is where you go from owning a job and showing up as a subcontractor, getting handed a work order and just going and completing it, to owning a business. And it seems, you're right, it does seem overwhelming because you're looking at, well, I got to document how I do estimates. I got to document how I write up the estimates. I have to be able to hand this off to a bookkeeper, and we have to keep track of the finances the same way. So I always have to use the same line items, the same, right? The list goes on. And then you can get into training, right? How do I do a steam shower? How do I do a floor? How do I rip stuff out? How do I make sure I get the dumpster ordered if I need it, right? All of
Right.
these things, they're all very overwhelming, but you made a great point. It was overwhelming and you didn't know how you were going to get to it. But how do it's the common question of, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? We just have
Well,
to start
exactly.
we got to take one thing and we got to put it in place. And then we got to grab another one and we need to put it in place. So everybody, don't think you can't do it, but the earlier you start, the better off you're going to be. Because
Absolutely.
the analogy I like to use is, you know, think about your business as you and your apprentice in a canoe, right? Nobody can get along in a canoe. It's very hard. You have to work together as a team. But if you need to pivot that canoe, you can spin it around 180 in 10 seconds or less, probably, because you can work as a team. There's only two of you. You spin this little thing around. But if you've got a cruise liner and it's out in the middle of the ocean and it's going full bore, which isn't very fast, but you've got thousands of people on it, how long does it take to turn that cruise ship 180 degrees and go a new direction? It's
Yeah.
not going to be easy. The bigger your company gets, the harder it's going to be to implement systems and processes down the road. So the sooner you start, the better off you're going to be. And it seems that you started within the first couple of years saying, whoa, 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 this isn't going to work without this stuff, which was that's an amazing revelation to me because not many contractors even have that.
We did get lucky, and there's a saying that there's a couple sayings that I think really helped me keep myself on the right track as far as business. One was I didn't use the word problem. I used the
Mm,
word as an opportunity for a solution. And I noticed when you use that term in any contact, when there is a problem, it changes the whole, um, all the input from everybody else. When you say there's an opportunity here for a solution rather than a problem, everybody cheers up. When you look at a problem, and this goes into setting up the business. So
mm-hmm,
you've got input from all these other people that are working with you, and people are throwing ideas at it, and you're writing down the ones that look like they have potential, and then you start working in that direction, and before you know it, all these little problems become really great opportunities for a solution, and you solve them, and that one thing helped me tremendously with the business, I think, is trying to not use the word problem.
Hmm.
And the other one was change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. I have a lot of employees, I've trained hundreds of tile guys. And one of the things that I thought was interesting with a lot of my tile guys that we were training is we would have crews that wanted to be subs and they wanted a helper, but they didn't want to pay them as an employee. So we would take them on as an employee, figure out their costs, and what it costs to have them as an employee and put them with them. And we would make more money because that crew would be more productive, right?
Hmm.
And we would just deduct out their production out of the installer's wages. And initially, a lot of the guys would go, "Well, that's $1,000 job. If I pay someone $200, now I've only made $800." And I said, "Okay, but let's see how many showers you can do, or how many square feet of floor you can do in a month, and let's look at those numbers and see what makes sense."
Hmm.
I think if you weren't trained in business, and a lot of tile installers that start their own businesses really weren't, and I wasn't either. So
Hmm.
it's not like I'm saying something negative. It's just you really have to think outside the box to get to a place to understand how to use employees correctly, and that employees are a benefit, not an expense. Um,
Yeah.
and that's where it starts. Once you realize that, I'm not the best bookkeeper, I can hire a good bookkeeper. She might cost $35, $40 an hour. It isn't coming out of my wages. Now I can apply that time to something that I am good at, and I can produce my 50, 60, 80, 100, whatever dollars an hour
Hmm.
toward, you're making more money. And I think that's where a lot of tile guys really struggle is, well, I can't afford a bookkeeper. I can't afford a helper. I can't afford another tile guy, but they don't see the big picture.
Yeah. You can't afford not to. Honestly, I think a bookkeeper
Yeah.
is probably one of the first hires any business should make. Especially as contractors, like you said, right? We're not generally, we haven't gone and taken any business classes. We just kind of fell into it. We're good at the thing. We're not good at the business portion. So if you can go focus on the thing, whatever it
Yeah.
may be, tile or hardwood or carpet, whatever you want it to be, and you can make $100 an hour doing that, go do that. Because if you can free up 10 hours a month by not having to deal with paperwork and books, you're either buying quality time with your family, which is the most valuable thing and probably why you started running your own business in the first place. Was you said, I want more time with my family, and then you ended up having less. So buy
Yeah.
your
That's
time
exactly.
back. But two, if it's freeing up time during the day, you can go take that 10 hours at $100 an hour, and you're making $1,000 more a month, but the bookkeeper's costing you 300 or 400. So you're still net positive on this transaction, like you're saying. And it's the same thing with employees, like you said. It's everyone's, oh, I can't afford them, or I can't pay them that much. You can't afford not to pay them well to get them to stick around
Yeah.
and actually be interested in this trade. Because let's admit it, when you all you get to do is mix buckets of thin set and make cuts, it pretty much sucks. So
Yeah. Clean
it,
the
it
van.
yeah, and that wasn't I didn't come up that way, but I've helped out. I know, it's not fun to be the apprentice. You don't always get to do the exciting things, and so I'd rather pay you a little bit more to entice you to stay to learn, and then turn you into something that's going to benefit me down the road. But even still, like you said, if you can get one extra shower in a month, that probably covers their wages. And so you're getting more done, but you still get all the money from the five other showers you do in a month, or the 4 or 5 others, whatever it's going to be. You're still
Yeah.
positive on the transaction, and eventually you should end up as a bigger positive as the person becomes more experienced. So it was you and a guy, and eventually, you built it up to having a second one, which now, I mean, you're out of pocket for two guys, and you're probably with three guys, you're probably all still stuck on one project. I
Yeah.
don't see you having a lot of times where two things were going on, and three people in a small bathroom doesn't generally cut it. So how did you even start to develop that? Because I'm assuming you started pulling away a little bit at this point, I would think, and having them do a lot of it while you were out schmoozing people and getting the next thing set up. Or
Believe it or not, early on when there was the three of us, I was working right beside them all the time.
okay,
So I stayed with them all the time. And what we did is once Luis became a lead guy, he would go start the next job and I would continue working, or I would go start the next job. Once we got to three, it turned into four really quick. And once it got to four, it turned into five really quick. And kind of the idea was there were a handful of crews that were really good in Denver. And the idea, we always had work. So the idea was let's bring these crews in and let's work as a team. You guys make money, I'll make money, we'll all
Mm-hmm.
make money. I'll make sure that I keep what frustrated me with being a subcontractor was you'd work for a flooring store and they would push you really hard and you'd do as much as you could. And then as soon as you were done, they had nothing for you for 3 weeks. And now you got five guys. So we started bringing in our own work and making a commitment to everybody that worked with us. And it wasn't always an easy commitment, but it was, if you work with us, we'll keep you busy
Mm-hmm.
every day. And when we couldn't keep them busy, they were cleaning the shop because at that time we had a shop and a slab fabrication shop and
Okay.
did architectural stone. So there was always something to do. So there was a tough time in 2008. There was a period there where it got, I think it was actually hit us in 2009 because our work was, we had big custom homes. So it
Okay.
flowed us right to the nine and then we got slow. But that was probably the hardest time in the industry for us was 2009, right after the crash of 2008.
I can believe
But
it.
we kept everyone busy and didn't lose a single employee
Wow.
through all that.
That's impressive. So, I mean, I got to assume that you start getting up to 4, 5, 6 guys. You weren't doing all of that on word of mouth, were you?
We were, believe it or
That's
not, we were.
okay.
We did no advertising. Still, United does very little, if any. There's a little bit on Facebook they do now, but very, very little. What we did is we strategized with some of the distributors in town, and we started out kind of going to everyone. And then we realized, why would we do that when, I'm a decorative material sales tile that's $100 a foot and Saks Materials Marketing. They have materials that are $100 a foot. Well, if they're going to have materials that are that expensive, they're going to pay that to install it too, or close to that to install it. So
Mm-hmm.
we started targeting and doing their showrooms. And that was our marketing strategy was, well, let's work with the highest of high end because that was the target market for us. So that really put us in a good spot remodel and a really good spot in high end residential. So that was our strategy. And it to this day, it still works. I mean, it's the phone rings every single day.
Okay. So you worked with the distributor to build out new locations for them so that they could say, "Oh, all this work was done by these people." So the people coming in already knew you had high standards, which is great. But that also gives you're not just dependent upon residential work. You now have some commercial work, so you're more diversified even than how most people are. We kind of all decide like, oh, we're commercial people or we're residential people. Like I only do residential remodel. Well, that field's not doing so well right now, and I'm not
Right.
working a lot. Now, granted, I'm also not advertising a ton, so I'm not bringing in a lot of work. And when you're not doing a lot of jobs, the word of mouth slows down. So I know what I've done to myself, and I could make it pick back up. I've just not been super interested in doing that right now. So I mean, I advertised over the weekend and the phones already rang 2 or 3 times today. And one of them was for a commercial project. I was like, nope, not licensed for it. Thanks. But, call my buddy over here and they can help you. So you can generally produce things fairly easily. And this was advertising for free in Facebook community groups, and I didn't pay. I just spent 30 minutes of my time putting up an old project and saying, here's the story behind it. And here we go. So, you don't have to necessarily pay to play, but I think there probably becomes a point in a business's size where word of mouth becomes a struggle. But I guess it depends on how large you want to get, right? The more people
Absolutely.
you promise to keep busy, the more you're going to have to find ways to drum up more work. But to
Yeah.
do it on word of mouth alone is very impressive. But I also don't think that just came from building a relationship with the distributor. it probably goes to having some core values. And I think you mentioned them a little bit earlier. We're going to be respectful. We're going to keep the house clean, those things. And so you're impressing the clients that they have almost no choice but to want to refer you to their friends and neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go out there as a contractor and you do what you say you're going to do, you pick up your phone, you resolve any issues with the client's always right, so to speak, right? I mean, we all know that's a challenge for all of us to have the client always be right. But if you can guide them in the right direction, do good work, stay neat, clean, be timely, all those things, and be professional, I think you end up I always used to say one good job is equal to 100 bad ones,
Mm-hmm.
so, if you run a business, and I hate to use the word old school, but I'd kind of like to say the word old school, just with what we were taught when we were kids. If you do those things, you're going to grow a business. You're going to get on a hamster wheel and you're going to be running. I think advertising definitely helps if you want to grow into a monster company, which that was
Mm-hmm.
never United's goal. Um, we had an opportunity to be a 10, $15 million a year business and chose not to. We
Okay.
felt like we would compromise our quality. Um, None of us had the skills to manage it at that level, but we thought if we could keep it between a $2 and $4 million a year business, everybody could live pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kind of keep control of the labor, make sure that we put out a good product, and that's kind of been our goal. And it's an interesting one because in business, if you're not growing, you're shrinking, right? So it's been
Mm-hmm.
a challenge trying to maintain between that $2 and $4 million mark of volume and be successful. You've had to really look at things and analyze your cost and analyze how you're doing business, and because everybody's income starts to go up, but yet you're trying to stay the same.
Yeah.
So it's been a challenge, but we feel like we've overcome that, and we're in a place where now that the employees are using their vision and not mine, they're kind of creating something different. They're getting into doing more commercial work and bigger projects that are commercial than I was doing. I had a couple of commercial clients that were more or less tenant finish, and they're looking at larger scale commercial projects and changing and creating a vision for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, so it's interesting you mentioned vision. So I think a lot of times, once again, we're contractors, right? We just kind of start, we have this skill set. We're like, I go do tile, I do carpet, I do hardwood. Like, I'm just an installer. How early on did you decide that this was going to become something bigger and start conveying that to the employees and telling them about, hey, we're going this way and we're looking to accomplish X, Y, and Z, right? Whether it's a revenue goal or how many showers get done in a month, right? I have to assume that you communicated a vision to them that they could all buy into and say, you know what, I want to be a part of that.
yeah, I mean, it's been about 10, 15 years. I started saying I would like this to be employee owned. I would like to see everybody in here that is, I hate to say the word worthy because that's not really the word. Everybody here that shows interest in wanting to be an owner of this company and can see the vision, create a vision as a team. That's a difficult thing to do because usually one person has this vision, the other one has that one. So if you can be a team player and come together and create a vision together that you all buy into and all think you can achieve, that was kind of like I want that for you guys because I don't think I want to do this forever. I
Mm-hmm.
started getting to a place where I wanted to get more involved in the product side and trying to make a difference for installers in the future. And innovating products was
Okay.
something that was interesting to me. So I kind of felt like I accomplished everything I wanted to with tile. I hit my goal, and I was happy to do that. Now the next goal was handing this off and letting them create their goal. And then me be able to start something new. And we were able to accomplish that 4 years ago.
I mean, it's not the common story. And I wish this was more common, right? So you had a dream, you had a goal, you communicated it with them, you let them buy into it, but you also let them help shape it, knowing that you wanted to hand this off. And I would assume that became part of the conversation of, guys, gals, I don't want to be around forever, right? I don't always want to do this. So you've helped me develop this. I want you to buy into it. And when I decide it's time to move on, this can all become yours. We'll figure out what that looks like. But then you guys can start controlling the vision of where this goes. And it sounds like that's what started happening. You made the move 4 years ago, like you said, and now they're starting to look at different commercial things and kind of take the business in another direction, although they have a really good base. But they also have, you're still there on payroll I'm assuming it's mostly like a consulting role at this point, because it doesn't sound like you have a very large share. So if you're needed, you get to go and put in your 2 cents. But for the most part, you're probably pretty hands off.
I am, yeah. We are in the same building as United Tile and Stone.
Mm-hmm.
So the president, Katie, comes and sees me, once or twice a week, 3 times a week. We talk about strategies and different things that are going on in the company. We kind of, so there is more of a consulting
Mm-hmm.
role. I have very little involvement on the day to day, but still kind of part of helping with the creation and kind of, this is what I did, so you can try this or you can do this. The first 3 years were somewhat challenging because no one knew what it looked like to do this, right? And you don't know what it's like owning a business, and you can explain it all day long, but until you own it and until it's yours, you really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I kept saying it's kind of like riding a horse. Somebody's got to be the president. I'm like, I like the idea of you all owning it, but somebody's got to be majority. And, I use the terms slack the horse on the butt and make it run. There's somebody in the business that has to be that person.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll all come up with a whole bunch of great ideas and they'll sit on the table until someone's like, hey, did you get that done? Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you, making people accountable. So the first couple of years, they were trying to run it, in my opinion, more like a committee. And it just wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
So there came a time, and I want to say it was probably last year, middle or beginning of last year, where they started struggling, and they came to me, and we sat and had a meeting, and we looked at the finances and we looked at things, and it had been dropping down quite a bit. And so we talked about it, and then Katie ended up taking on that role of president, and she started, implementing these systems and changing the systems to
Okay.
work for the new program, and looking at. They started creating a different business than what I had, and it just took off, and they're doing
Mm-hmm.
incredibly well. So yeah, it's tricky because you don't know what it's going to look like until you hand it off, and then even then you don't know how to. It isn't easy. It's a lot of effort,
Mm-hmm. Well,
to
I want to dig into that, because I think another problem is just in general, contractors have an issue relinquishing control, because we're the guys and gals that go and do it, right? And then we hire an employee and we're like, I don't know, I can't let you, like, I can't leave you alone, I can't trust you, nobody's going to do it as good as I am. But you can't scale without relinquishing control. And it sounds like maybe you had some of that, but then they all came in and they were like, oh, we're equals, like, we can do this together, right? And so now, like you said, they kind of took it to committee, and when everyone gets an equal share in the say of how things go, it's never going to end well, right? Like you said, somebody has to be the boss. So I want to dive in a little bit more to that, but I need to interrupt us for just a minute here.
okay.
All right. Not all foam boards have the high performance that Go Board does. Johns Manville has been producing rigid foam boards for decades for commercial roofs. What does this mean for flooring and shower applications if they aren't exposed to the same harsh elements that a roof is? If it's good enough for a commercial roof, then it's even better for your flooring, countertop, or shower project, especially at a reasonable price. Visit www.jm.com/GoBoard for more information. And don't forget that they have a ton of different options for you to use. You don't have to use Go Board sausage tubes as your sealant. They got a list of approved other sealants that you can look at and use so that you can make your system and shower go together no matter what. All right. Introducing the ultimate solution for flooring contractors, a cloud-based virtual estimating software. Get accurate and detailed estimates in minutes without ever leaving the job site or even the office. With features like real-time collaboration, project management tools, and automatic material calculations, you'll have the information you need to close deals faster and more efficiently than ever before. Try it today and experience the future of flooring estimating. Check out the link in the show notes to demo the program or visit estimates.flooracademypod.com. I'm working on getting it linked up on my flooring website, and I think it'll be very interesting to use this software in that people can come to my page and get a rough estimate on their own. They can measure their own home. They're going to be able to plug in numbers. It'll spit out a number minus material at them. And so I'm excited to kind of see how that goes. Obviously, I'm going to put, a little waiver on there that this is based on your numbers. Nothing is official until I come out and actually measure it myself. Don't worry, folks. Like, I'm not gonna get had here. But a lot of times people want to know the cost, and that's the question, right? They call you up on the phone. They say, "How much does it cost?" Now they can get their number, and they don't even have to talk to me. And for someone like my wife, that gets absolutely just anxious thinking about having to call somebody, what an offer for somebody that they can just come, they get the price, you get an email address, a phone number, and you can contact them and keep that moving forward. And the price can change because they've already been warned. So check that out, estimates.flooracademypod.com. All right, Dave, we are looking at handing things off and being comfortable doing it. So how hard was that for you to even start relinquishing control and saying, "Oh my gosh, I have to trust them to do it"? But then once you then handed off a company and said, "I'm going to take a small salary out of this company. You guys can have it, but don't screw this up."
Yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking because it's very difficult to let go, as I think most people know. What helped me is there were really good people, and it took a lot of years to get to the place where you could hand it off, right? Luis had been working with me for 27, 28 years, I believe, something like that. Renee had been there a while. Katie was kind of new, and Mondo, those are the four that really own it right now. Mondo, Katie, Luis, and Renee. So, and when you take the four of them, they all possess great skills for owning a company. They had managed jobs. Renee had ran the finances. Katie's kind of the newest, and she's the one who actually took the role of president. And it was kind of by committee because she's the strongest in that regard. It was very difficult. It took many years to get to a place where you can say, "Here you go, I'm out of here." You know what I mean? I don't need to look over your shoulder. It was difficult, but I had to do it when I started Shower Concepts. There was no longer a choice. I just I couldn't do both and be good at it. So it was at the day that Shower Concepts started, or I shouldn't say the day, I would say probably the first year, it was this learning curve of letting go, trusting. And like I said, the people had already taken on the majority of the role that they were going to be in.
Was Shower Concepts your way of forcing you out because you were going to invest your time somewhere else, or did that happen by accident and it was a blessing in disguise?
A little of both, honestly. I was working in that direction. I went to Salt Lake City to meet Rod Catwick, and I was intending on starting a distributorship. And I walked in, and I don't know if you know who Rod Catwick is. Yeah. He's probably the innovator of foam shower pans and stuff. He's one of the custom anyway. He's definitely a smart, interesting guy. I met with him, shook his hand, and said, I have no interest in this damn foam stuff. I just want to, look at your distributorship, because at that time he was a Profilitech distributor. And so I was like, I want to look at this. I'm thinking of starting a distributorship in Denver with Profilitech. So I spent a couple hours with Rod, and I'm like, yeah, don't even bother. I'm a mud guy. I have no interest. And he was doing a presentation for a customer there, and a light bulb just popped, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this guy's brilliant!" And initially, I think we were both kind of sticking our chests out, like, "Well, I'm the title guy," you know. I don't know for sure, but it was really, the first impression, and first when we met, it was kind of like we were sizing each other up, so to speak, because I had a product I was trying to get to market, and we were talking about what we did and what we knew and all that kind of stuff. And I had no interest in the phone, but I listened to him present this, and it was like, wow, this is a good idea. This is crazy good idea. I flew back to Denver, and he was saying, I'd like to start something in Denver. And he was really early on in the phases of shower pans. I mean, he was making them. He knew what he was doing. He had an idea, but there were really no major systems, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And how he was making them was the fundamentals were there, but it wasn't how he makes them today, we'll say. So I went back to Denver, and I thought, God, I think I'm more interested in the phone than I am the being a Profilitech dealer. And so I called Rod up, and I spent a weekend with him, and we just hit it off like we were brothers. I mean, it was fun because we both are pretty creative thinkers. And
Okay.
so we hit it off really well. And then Shower Concepts, it was like, we're going to do this. I'm starting it. So I started it, and that kind of, so I was leaning in that direction, but I didn't know what it was going to be yet. And that just kind of pushed it off. And we picked a date. I bought a machine. I had it show up at a shop, and there was this big thing of bolts and this machine sitting in this shop, and I rented a shop and put it in it, and I had to figure out how to put it together. And the first shower pan I made was 10 feet by 4 feet with a 6-foot line drain in the center of it. So it was a multi-pitch line drain shower, and I had no idea how to make it. I was like, I can do this in mud, but I don't know how to do this in foam. It took me, I think, 2 attempts and 16 hours to make that first shower pan,
Okay.
but I did it. And that kind of drove me in the direction of starting this. And then it did require all my attention. So I think sometimes some of the guys were shocked that I left as fast as I did once this started, because they would be like, I need to know how to do this, and I would be like, well, you're gonna have to wait a minute, because once this started, I was able to let go a lot easier. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you had something to put your time and interest in. You were probably moving in a direction where you were more passionate about a new venture than you were about the old one, knowing that you were planning on handing it off. And so it was probably good for both parties in that it happened fairly quickly, and they had to step up and start really taking ownership of the company and being able to lead it and control it. So, let's go backwards a little bit. And you talked earlier about you would retrain a tile installer if you hired them, but you were finding other crews. You had people on payroll. You had subcontractors you were using. Was there an actual interview process that you had established in order to make sure you were finding the right fit for team members and using them so that you knew that you could grow them into people that could take over the company?
They have a really good procedure now. Honestly, when I was running it, I didn't have as good of one as they have. Um, they vet the new employees a lot better than I did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would go through 3 or 4 before I'd find the one. They're doing a really good job in that regard. Katie has put some systems into play to find guys. I just happen to know everyone, from
Mm-hmm.
being around. So I knew who my competitors were for the most part, and I knew the up and coming crews that were coming around that were doing a good job. So I kind of would just pluck people out of wherever they were and bring them in and kind of show them our program and see if it looked like something that would fit. And luckily, I think there was more luck because it really wasn't. I didn't have the procedures I should have had
Okay.
in that regard. But I think there was a little luck involved. Most of the crews that have worked with us a year, let's say if a crew had worked with us a year, most of them had stayed at least 10 years.
Wow.
So if they made it 1 year, they were with us a minimum of 10. Very few, we didn't have a high turnaround rate. Um, I feel like times were different and the crews were different than the ones that I'm seeing up and
Hmm.
coming. Um, but we were really lucky in that regard in the tile business. When I left, the interesting thing is two or three of the top crews decided they were going to start their own business as well.
Okay.
Um, I kind of thought a couple of them were going to be in this ownership program, but when it came time for it, um, they looked at it differently than what I did or than the other people that wanted to be part owners did because it was always United. When we changed it from Larson, it was United, and it wasn't just a name; it was an idea, right?
Hmm.
How do we stay united, keep each other? Nobody's going to get rich in this program, but you're going to do well, and you're going to be, you're going to be taken care of, so to speak, if that makes sense. But it's in our program. It was hard for one person to do $1 million, but it wasn't hard for someone to do, a strong six-figure income, if that made sense.
Yeah.
So it was believing that that was what was important, making sure that the guy beside you was doing as well as you're doing.
Hmm.
In the slow times, what we did is we made sure everybody worked that week. We didn't make sure that our best crew was working and then the bad crew, and we didn't really have a bad crew, but the crew that was behind them, we made everybody work,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Well,
So,
everyone's getting the opportunities to succeed, and I think it's an interesting point in that some of the people decided to walk away and start their own business because everyone thinks it's a great idea, and I think this is the major downfall of our current system within flooring, tile, stone, in how I don't see any other trade showing up to workrooms and getting handed work orders. I just don't. I see
yeah,
a
no,
bunch of companies with employees, and I see a bunch of small contracting businesses that go find their own projects and do it. And then within flooring and tile and stone, there's this really weird culture of some of us find all our own projects, like myself and you. Other people will go work for stores, and some people go and do like major workroom stuff with some of the big box stores. And everyone thinks that the only way to make money is to be on piece rate, and that's probably where those employees were at, right? Oh, I'm going to make more doing it myself because I get all of the money. Well, that's true, you do, but you get all of the headaches and all of the responsibility and all of the work that comes with it, right? You got to go find the work, you have to lock it down, you got to procure the materials, you got to complete the work, you got to make sure it's happy, you got to warranty it, you got to make sure you got the bank account in place that if something ever goes wrong, you can just fix it without having to worry about insurance claims. And the list goes on and on and on, right? We got to hire people, we need to make sure our taxes get done. There's a million headaches. And so what you're talking about is all of these people came together saying none of us is going to get the $1 million a year out of a company that does a couple million a year,
mm,
but all of us can make a good six-figure income, which we would make as the salary. But maybe now, instead of it being $100,000 a year, maybe they're all getting 160 a year, or 150, 150, 160 a year, because they're able to take some profit sharing out of the company, but they're
mm,
splitting the workload. So
yeah,
you're not getting the 400,000 a year bonus, but you're getting 60 a year, but you have a bunch of people to depend on. And I think that's a way more attractive system personally, because I don't have to have all of the headaches. We split it. We work as a team. We all come together. And honestly, going from 100 to 150, 160 a year, that's a big bump up in pay.
yeah, and especially if you set the business up right now, it's in dividends and in profit sharing, where before in salary, you're paying a lot more taxes on
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, and you've got to earn it. So it's like when I get up and I go to work and we work good as a team, we're all doing it for each other. Um, I used to tell the guys that had talked about leaving, I said, what you got to remember is that company pays $250,000 a year to make sure that you have work. It pays. There's employees working. There's people selling jobs. There's people estimating. There's people doing warranty work. There's people, you don't even know how many warranties you have because we have a warranty guy come behind you and clean it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't, good luck. You can make more money. You can, but you're going to work more. And that's the bottom line. And
Yeah.
the tricky part for tile guys is figuring out how to make money when they're not on their knees, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of tile guys do the design, pick up the materials, deliver the materials, and they're lucky if they make anything for that.
Sadly, yes. Look, if you're going to do something, if it takes your time, it's got to have a cost behind it, folks.
Yeah, it does, and it's as an individual subcontractor, especially a young one that's trying to get work. The first thing you give up is that's income. Yeah, I'll pick up the tile to get that job. I mean, the funny thing is right now, the economy is so good for tile setters. You could go to any Home Depot parking lot probably and get a job,
Just about,
so,
yeah.
it's not always like this. I've been in the industry 30 years and it's been very different than this. This is a totally different time for our trade. I mean, there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of young people coming into the trade. There's people that are putting a value on a day or a job. I mean, the way that bidding is happening is completely different. I mean, in some ways, I think it's a really positive thing, and in a lot of ways, it's a negative thing as well. Um, when you're not used to paying your own taxes,
Mm-hmm.
you can get yourself in a lot of trouble.
Oh, yeah.
I made $200,000 a year. Well, yeah, now you owe 80 of it in taxes.
Yeah.
So it's subcontracting or contracting is not for everyone.
No, it's not, but like I said, I think it's one of the worst things that's happened to this industry. It's the biggest lie being told. Oh, you got to be your own boss. Piece rate's the only way to go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, not when you don't know how to handle the money and you're not studying it. You can end up, like you said, owing a ton in taxes. How many times have you heard about the guy goes and buys the dually with the deposit check on a big commercial project and then can't make payroll on Friday? You've heard all the stories. You also said earlier that it was like, just do, old school business, right? Do what you say when you say you're going to do it. And it's sad that the bar in contracting is set so low that you can step over it just by picking up your phone in a timely manner, returning phone calls in a timely manner, showing up to an estimate when you say you're going to show up, right? If you say 4:00 on Tuesday and you're knocking on the door at 3:58, that if anybody else that's coming to bid either isn't going to show up on time, they're not going to provide a bid, or it's going to take them a week to provide the bid, right? And so one of the things I get complimented on all the time is I show up when I say I'm going to show up. When I leave, I tell them, you will have this by tonight at like 9 p.m. as long as I'm getting there early enough. And I get it out same night. And so I delivered on what I said I was going to do. And a lot of times I get back, you're the only one that turned in a bid, but you turned it in when you said you were going to do it. Like, how can we not trust you to deliver on everything else you've promised us while you were here?
Yeah.
And so it's really sad how low the bar is that you can step over it. But I think a lot of that comes from this lie being sold. You have to go do piece rate. You have to be your own boss to make any money in this business. And it's just not true. There are good companies out there willing to pay good wages or
Absolutely.
even help you become owners of the company, right? Like, let's build this thing together and then you can have a share of it. And you're more invested, right? There's no reason to want to stick around in a company when you're treated like crap, paid like crap, and there's no advancement opportunities. And you had the exact opposite of all of that going on. You were probably treating people very fairly. You gave them advancement opportunities, and you were paying them well, and found ways to probably entice them into higher pay as they took on more responsibility and bought into the company more.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I didn't do is get greedy. I made a fair salary. I paid myself fair. When the company profited, I shared the profits with the employees and myself. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, well, we made 400,000. I'm going to take that. It was, we made 400,000. We're going to leave 200 in the company. I'll take 100. I'll split up 100 with you guys. That was kind of always the mentality is let's treat each other. Let's be fair to each other. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if I worked for someone, I would appreciate that. There are people in the program that didn't, like let's say the next year we didn't have 400,000 in profits. We had 150 and we were able to have a Christmas party and do this, but we weren't able to do a whole lot for profit sharing. There were times when some of the employees express disappointment. And it's like, well, I feel the same way, so we're all in the same boat. We're in this together.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take anything either. I'm doing this for us. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so next year, let's set our goals a little higher and let's try to achieve them, because we didn't do it this year. So then everybody would get together as a team and, we would create that. But it's hard because some employees have a harder time understanding where that money comes from.
Yeah.
It's like it comes from being efficient. It comes from setting a goal, planning it, and then achieving it. When you achieve that goal and you set the correct goal, you're going to make money. If you just go to work and do your job and don't have any idea what you're aiming for, I mean, how are you going to have a successful company and have profit sharing and be able to do bonuses or anything like that? I see a lot of, that's, I think, the biggest shortcoming in a lot of companies or the younger people starting companies that don't really understand. You have to create a vision. You have to have goals in business, I believe.
Definitely. I think that's left out a lot, right? So you're sold this vision of, once again, like you need to go be your own boss, but no one tells you how to do that. And I didn't know that's where the show came from. Honestly, is I was like, how the hell do you run a business? So let me start. If I needed to know, I knew other people needed to know. So it's kind of a no brainer to be like, I'll just record all these things I find out and share it with everybody so we can all learn together. But it's like you said, knowing what to do. I think a lot of people get afraid of conveying the numbers to their employees. And I don't think you should not hesitate to do that. If everyone's like, what if they see I'm making the $5,000 a week, then they're going to want to run out because they think I get the $5,000. And so they're going to leave me after 6 months and they're going to start charging $4,000. Well, yeah, that's because you're only paying them $15 an hour and they're not living on that. So they need to go charge $4,000 and do it badly. But if you can convey to them, look, I'm charging $5,000. I'm going to set $2,000 aside out of that into the company. So I'm left with $3,000. And then out of the $3,000, I owe you $1,000 for the week. So now I'm down to $2,000 for myself. Okay. Now I didn't get all that money. So I actually only made $1,000 more than you. However, I provided all of the tools, took all the responsibility, found the project, worked the hours to find the next project. And you start having this conversation with them and letting them know, like, hey, man, this is how it works. Some of them are going to get it, like you said, and some of them aren't. And if they don't, they may not be the best fit for your company because they're going to be the ones, like you said, where 1 year profit sharing is really good and everyone has pulled their weight and they get a big share. And the next year, it's a lot lower and they're sitting there complaining and bitching. Well, what'd you do throughout the year to help us earn that, right? Or were you the squeaky wheel that needed the grease the whole year? We kept trying to grease you up, and really it was just that the bearings were crushed, and you got to go. So you start having these talks and communicating with them and trying to grow them, because that's really what we need to be doing. Is if we want to replace ourselves or have this asset to where it can run, they need this knowledge as much as you. And let me ask you this. How many people did you have leave and come back?
I had quite a few leave and come back.
Because it
Probably four
sucks.
or five. You know, one thing that I tried to convey really strongly is the business was its own entity. I was not the business. And
Hmm.
when you're showing numbers, you're showing the business numbers. You're not showing what you make. You're showing what the business made. And because the business made that doesn't mean that's what you make. I think I think that was one way of helping the people that were working with us. It's like, okay, we're going to set a goal. We're going to do 250,000 a month. That's our goal target,
Yeah.
right? So we're going to do 250,000 a month, us as the business. Now, when we each get separate, I'm Dave. You're Katie, you're Luis.
Yep.
This is United Tile. So now we have this money in the business that we can allocate to whatever we're going to allocate it toward. And you take your profit, you leave some in. One of the bigger issues is accountants will often say to you, you might as well take that money out of the business because you're going to pay taxes on it anyway.
It's so
That
bad.
is a terrible, terrible thing to do.
Hmm.
I think it's important that you take some so that you can feel like there's some risk reward factor in it. But, having a company that has assets in it and money in it is important.
Hmm.
Didn't drive up in a dually truck, you know what I mean, for the first 10 years of business. Not that I didn't make the money to do it. I didn't live in a big house when I first started. I let the business grow in size and money and let the money stay in the business. I took out enough to feel like I was, getting paid for my risk reward. But I didn't live high on the hog,
Hmm.
especially initially. But when you're talking about goals as a company, I think that's one thing that is really, really important is the company is the company. I'm Dave. So if the
Yeah.
company makes money, that doesn't mean it's all mine. We want a strong company because there's going to be a week where we don't, or a month where we don't hit our 250,000 a month, but all those bills are still the same. Your salary still gets paid, mine does, the rent gets paid. And as you make money, what you don't anticipate is your general liability insurance. As you grow a company. I remember one day it was $800 a month, the next it was 3,000. Pretty soon it was 30 grand a year. You know what I mean? 40 grand a year.
Jeez.
You don't anticipate those kind of expenses,
Hmm.
as you make money. And there's a lot of things that come along with making money that suck for a business. Your expenses go up astronomically.
Yeah. Well, and this is what you got to constantly be reevaluating the numbers, right? And so it starts off one of the very first basic conversations that this podcast has always been about is know your numbers, right? And if you don't know them, then how do you operate a business effectively? And that means as you scale, you have to continue to know your numbers because, like you said, at one point, general liability was $800 a year, and then it was $40,000, and it happens. I get it, right?
Yeah,
You
it
continue to
does.
grow, you have more assets, you have more people performing different tasks. It can get out of control, and if you're not accounting for that in what you're needing to bid a project at, then how do you pay it? It's either going to come out of your profit or you're going to start going negative money. The other thing I love that you said was, I am not the business. And I think that's the biggest mistake. The thing I hear all the time, and I used to be of the same mindset, was, well, I am the business, right? And that's not what you want. Like, you own the business, so the business is mine. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, you own the business, but you are an employee of your business, which puts it at the top of the totem pole. You
Mhm.
are subservient to the business, and you must put the business's best interests first, not yours, which means if you wouldn't pull all of the money out of your own personal bank account, why are you pulling all of the money out of your business bank account that the company is generating? Take what you need, leave the rest there. It's okay to pay taxes on it. If your accountant is telling you you need to go buy the new truck or some tool and spend the money at the end of the year, go find a new accountant because that is some of the worst advice you can get.
Yeah,
Capital
it is.
capital savings is a part of a business.
Well, and you're spot on with that. If the business fails, you fail. And not only you
Hmm.
fail, as you're building it, everyone else that works with you fails and gets to start in a new company. You know, if that money isn't in the business, you're failing.
Yes, 100%. And it's easy when you have, we talked about having a vision, having setting goals, and making sure we can move the company forward. These are all basic concepts that are often neglected. But this is the difference between building something successful and just showing up and owning a job every day, because you can now get everybody on the same page. You know where you're going, you know what you need to accomplish, you know that you need to leave money in it. And so now you have that actual business to where you are putting it first. If you just want to show up and collect a paycheck, look, it's possible. People have been doing it for hundreds of years as contractors. But then, that brings us back to the point of where we started of, do you really want to be the guy at the end of 10, 20, 40 years saying, oh, I'm hanging it up. I've got a trailer full of tools for some young buck out there that wants to do this. I need $30,000.
Yeah.
Man, I'd rather say I need $1 million for this thing. That every time you put $1,000 into it, you get $10,000 out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it and thought to myself, I could sell it outright. I could hire a manager to run it, or I could hand it off to the people that already know how to run it. I could
Mm-hmm.
make an income off of it that it seems fair to them and fair to me. So I draw a salary. It's dropped from when I was working there. I get a 10% of the profits on top of that salary. Um, and everybody makes money,
Mm-hmm.
and they walked into a business that has a lot of potential, that has, $3 million a year in customers, that are already set up, and all the systems are in place. So they come in and plug in and then adapt and change them and make them how they want them, and build their own vision, So it's really been exciting this year to see the people step up, and the company doing well, and watching these people grow into owning a company. I mean, that's rewarding in itself. And then the added bonus of having a salary on top of that, that allowed me the ability to be able to start this company. Had I not done that, I would have never been able to take the risk, because I went 2 years with no salary starting Shower Concepts.
Okay.
You know, you can't, I mean, in our industry, I don't think anybody makes enough to take 2 years off of a salary. So I was
No, not
grateful.
usually. Yeah. That's
Yeah, I was
big.
very, very grateful to be able to hand the company over, retain my salary. I think it was 3 years of full salary. Then after 3 years, it dropped down a little bit, and then it'll remain what it is for 5 or 10, 15 years. We're working on setting the timeline. And I'm kind of also keeping an eye on the profits of the company, making sure that I'm not taking too much, because I don't want them to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, it's all of us communicating together to make sure it's a fair number, and I still
Okay.
contribute.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. And it sounds like it's been a success because you didn't make yourself you found a way to let people do things as you grew, right? You weren't always the face of the company. And I think that's another problem that contractors find themselves in is, well, I want Dave to install it, or why isn't Dave here bidding this, right? It's there was other people that started going and interfacing with the clientele and
Yes.
interacting with them, which makes all of the difference when it comes time to sell. It's not this huge problem of, well, where's Dave? Why isn't Dave here? Because they already had the relationships with Katie and Luis and the others to know that they were going to show up, they were going to get the job done, and everything is going to continue rolling along full steam ahead, as opposed to, well, I can't trust you now because Dave's not there.
Yeah, what we did is we integrated all those people in with our top clients, right? So, you know, we'd go out to lunch with our top client, bring Katie, Luis, they knew him from the jobs. Mondo, they knew him from the jobs. So everybody interacted already,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not like, and that was one of the challenges that I thought about, is if I were going to bring in a manager, it would take 3 to 5 years to develop all those relationships. And then I would have to start phasing myself out after that. Or if I were going to sell it outright, I had some friends that sold their company and ended up not setting up the sale correctly, and whoever went to buy the company wiped them out. They took all the receivables and left, and
Jeez.
left them with all the bills because they didn't have time to change all their lines of credits and their accounts at the distributors. They didn't think about what could happen if we didn't have that all set up correctly. And
Man.
so I thought about it, and it was like, well, selling the business doesn't sound that appealing because I've got to trust some stranger.
Hmm.
These people are great people and they deserve an opportunity. And if they want to take it and run with it, that's great. And I get a little something out of
Yeah.
being a tile setter and starting a company and running it my whole life.
Hmm. Well, they were the ones who helped you build it, right? So we're just taking care of the people that helped us do it. They were already there. They earned it more than anybody else, in my opinion, because it wouldn't have happened
Absolutely.
without them.
Yeah. And each one has different, they all have different skills. So it's like those people together can run this company better than I could run it. They're more skilled.
Hmm.
I was a good tile setter and a good salesman. That's what I was.
Hey, it's got
Or I
to,
am.
that's, but recognizing your skill set and then knowing that you need to bring in other people to assist and, strengthen your shortcomings, knowing that, maybe Luis wasn't the best salesman, right? And he wasn't going to be able to go and interact on that level, but man, he was a hell of a setter. So I've got that part taken care of. And man, he's really good at making sure Mrs. Jones feels good about the project. And my soft skills weren't always what they needed to be. And I'm not saying you don't have good soft skills, but as an example. So you start finding people to do the things you hate or suck at,
Yeah,
and you build that team, and then you all come together, and it's going to be a lot easier to phase yourself out when you do that. You have to trust other people in order to make this dream work, but no one's going to trust you if you don't communicate that dream to them. That's really what
absolutely.
I've heard.
Yeah. Well, you got to all be on the same page, right? It's like, a football team doesn't win just because they have a good quarterback.
Hmm.
You got to have a good team around you, and everybody's got to have the same goal. And when you achieve, all are on the same page, you know what that goal is, and you're all working toward it. Your chances of success are way higher than just coming in and not telling anybody what you're trying to do. The quarterback wouldn't know who to throw to.
Yeah,
Nobody would know where to be. It'd be luck if you got a playoff.
definitely. So, Dave, is there anything we didn't hit on that we need to have as part of this discussion?
I think we landed on everything. Being open-minded, I think in the future of our trade,
Hmm.
changing the way our trade is looked at is important.
Yeah.
That's probably a different discussion, honestly. But you know, like I said earlier, when I met Rod and saw foam and foam boards and things like that, I was a mud guy. I think people need to really think about the future of our trade and if it's going to be around if everybody does mud, because the younger generation doesn't seem to want to do mud anymore. Not that you can't do mud, and not that it's not important, but I mean, look at the innovations for the future of our trade, and I think that
Yeah.
staying open-minded is the way that we're going to continue to have a tile trade.
I agree. It's the only way to keep things going. If we're not learning, then we're not growing, and so we're dying and becoming irrelevant dinosaurs. And it's not that there's not an application for mud. I really hate that there's a mud versus foam debate. I do. It
Yeah,
drives
I
me
do
nuts
too.
because
There's a
there
place for both of them in your company.
that's exactly it. There's still times where mud's going to be bad. And I'm not even a tile guy, and I get this, okay? And
Yeah,
so you can't pour self level over everything. Okay, you might have to go mud something. It might make more sense to mud a wall. Is foam good? Yes, it has great applications. Let's use it when it's a viable fit to the project. There's 100 different saws out there to cut tile with. Okay, so pick the one that works for the application. Right? I can use a cutter. I can use a grinder. I can go get my wet saw. We have dustless saws. Pick one.
Yeah.
Which one works best for the application? Okay, I'm going to sell a job to the client the same way. I think a lot of times people get caught up on, this is my system, this is how I use it. Great. Pick any of the major companies, right? Just pick one, and if you want to be a systems guy, sell it. But if you're not open to finding ways to help that potential client get to an end result, and maybe budget is a concern, and doing a shower in mud might lower it the $1,000 you need to get there, do you want to make the money and do the shower? Or do you have to sell the other system, right? Like, let's find ways to accommodate our clientele in getting what they need and delivering them the product they need, as opposed to being stuck on, this is the only way, this is the new way, it has to be done this way. That's a horrible mentality.
Yeah, I mean, I think for our trade to be successful and for a tile contractor to be successful, I mean, and this is arguable. I mean, everybody's got their own idea on this, but I feel like if you get educated on all the different ways of doing things, you'll know when you're sitting there looking at the job what's going to be the best for that application. I mean, there are absolutely times when mud is for sure the best.
Mm-hmm.
There are absolutely, if I'm doing 190 shower pans in a commercial building, I would really look seriously at foam. I mean, come on, guys. You want to have all that mud hanging around on the job site, all those rip bags, carry all that up 6 stories,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's, I would just like to see people continue to be open-minded to all the different ideas and ways that our trade is evolving. And it's pretty cool. Shower concepts and things to Rod, Cat, and all that. I think it's really moving in a positive direction, and there's some really neat products on the horizon.
There's a lot of cool stuff being developed to make it easier for people, to allow us to get more creative and do it. So that's definitely another discussion. I don't want to go down that vein too much. I would love to thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on, giving us the insights behind what you were able to develop from Larson Tile into United Tile and Stone, and how it's allowed you to now venture into starting another company, Shower Concepts. I think it's awesome that, there are these great success stories of tile contractors. And when we're looking around the online groups, or just in public in general, and you tell someone like, oh, I'm a flooring installer, I'm a tile contractor, like you're looked down on by society, almost like it's this dirty blue collar trade, and it's got a negative connotation to it because everyone hates contractors because they're not reliable. Let's change the narrative. Okay, this is how we do it. We have to be able to build things like Dave built that have good reputations in their area and people look up to, and then kids will want to aspire to become a part of it because it has such a good reputation. It's known in the community because it's been there and is a part of it. So let's keep working towards that, folks. That's what we're here to do, is build these assets and stop owning a job. So thank you all for listening. Make sure you check out flooracademypod.com. You can find the podcast on all of your favorite listening platforms. Head on over to the shop. You can pick up a really cool shirt or a hoodie. We got coverings right around the corner, so go pick up a fanny pack, and you can be like the cool kid at coverings with the Floor Academy fanny pack with all your stuff put in it, because you're going to get so much swag and you're not going to want to carry it. So it's just stuff it in the fanny pack. What else? Head on over to patreon.com/Floor Academy. Even $5 a month goes a long way in continuing to help the content to be made. I appreciate the support. Don't forget to check us out over on YouTube. We got 160 subscribers. I got 840 to go until I hit 1,000. I need 1,000 to even be close to getting monetized over there. Help me out. Tell your friends. Make sure you click the subscribe button. And we've got one last word from Tice, and then we will catch you all next week. I hope you all attended the International Surface event this year in Las Vegas. What a great event. The event was packed with wall-to-wall product. Tice has released the Tice 2023 Product and Trends Lookbook, packed with the newest products hitting the market this year, capturing a snapshot of what everyone was able to discover on site. Make sure to access the lookbook in the show notes. All right. Thanks again, Dave. Thanks everybody for listening, and we will catch you next week.